Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. Let me start with a Jack Kerouac quote: "You boys going to get somewhere or just going?" We didn't understand his question, and it was a damned good question. My article over the weekend is the crypto avocado millennial economy. We'll post that in another podcast, but do have a listen. The fastest growing and shrinking economies in 2018, according to The Economist. World GDP is expected to increase by 2.7% this year, just slightly less than the 2.9% registered in 2017. Once again, the biggest contributor will be China. The world's second biggest economy is projected to grow by 5.8% this year, representing roughly a third of the total global expansion. However, this rate is still a full percentage point less than the country's mark last year. Xi Jinping, China's president, is seeking to rein in credit growth, slowing its economy. This leaves India as the world's fastest growing large economy, with a brisk projected increase in GDP of 7.8%. Southeast Asia is also expected to perform well. Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos are all slated to come in above 6%. That's the Mekong Delta economies. Nicolas Maduro says Venezuela will issue $5.9 billion in oil-backed cryptocurrency. Maduro says the cryptocurrency will usher in the 21st century and boost Venezuela's access to hard currency. I have ordered the emission of 100 million petros with the legal sustenance of Venezuela's certified and legalized oil wealth, he said. Every petro will be equal in value to Venezuela's oil barrel. Home thoughts, I've been reading Robert Ruark's Uhuru. The book Uhuru is seldom mentioned today, but in 1962 it remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 months. Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. The novel Uhuru is loosely based on real events that took place during the uprising of black Africans in Kenya in the 1960s. As Kenya prepared for open elections and independence from Great Britain, the first item on the native Africans' agenda was reclaiming land from white settlers. After World War I, as many as 20,000 white people settled on large tracts of the most fertile land and thrived with successful agricultural farms. As Kenya prepares to hang a white man for the very first time, it quickly becomes apparent that there would be no smooth transition. The book Uhuru is seldom mentioned today, but in 1962 it remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 months. Dubbed as a massive, explosive novel, a high-voltage shocker, it was indeed. Thoroughly enjoyed it, very insightful, and it's surprising that I'd actually never read it. I'd seen it in so many bookshops. And then I found a video of Robert Ruark on a safari, and it's about an hour, and it's well worth watching. Obviously, there were hunting game, which I don't approve of. That was the case in those days, but tremendous local flavour, the Norfolk, all kinds of things in that video. Filmed in 1954, narrated and featuring Robert Ruark, Harry Selby and Andrew Holberg guide Ruark to a 110-pound elephant, black rhino, leopard, and a huge 49-inch buffalo are taken, as well as other species. This is a chance to see what a safari in British East Africa was like during this era. Will Knocker spent his Christmas by the beach in Kiwayu, and he tweeted, "My sort of Swahili coast." A major outbreak of coral-eating crown-of-thorns starfish has been found munching Australia's World Heritage-listed Great Barrier Reef. The predator starfish feeds on corals by spreading its stomach over them and using digestive enzymes to liquefy tissue, and the outbreak hits as the reef is still reeling from 2 consecutive years of major coral bleaching. Each starfish eats about its body diameter at night And so over time, that mounts up very significantly. A lot of coral will be lost. America is in a deep freeze as Australia fries. Take a look at the statistics from the FT. Political reflections: Merkel begins make or break government talks. And this has been continuing for quite a while, but I think there's only one option. It's Madame Merkel. These New Year's comments by Kim Jong-Un extending an olive branch to the south, irrespective of their differences in ideology and systems, were ignored in the US. This is from a tweet via Max Blumenthal. And, he's very granular as Kim Jong-un, isn't he? And he's obviously trying to peel the South Koreans off the US, with some success, it seems to me. Stratfor: proxy battles across the Middle East will intensify in 2018 as the US, Saudi Arabia and Israel close ranks against Iran. A Saudi-led coalition's plane crashed in Houthi-controlled area of Yemen. Stratfor was saying that they thought the war in Yemen was winnable. I don't think so. Saudi Arabia arrests 11 princes. The princes arrested at the palace were also seeking compensation for a death sentence that was issued against one of their cousins, who had been convicted of killing another man and executed in 2016. Security services on Thursday arrested the 11 princes after they refused to leave Casa al-Hokum in Riyadh. Princes objected to a decree that ordered the state to stop paying their utility bills. No one is above the law in Saudi Arabia. Everyone is equal and is treated the same as others. Any person, regardless of their status or position, will be held accountable should they decide not to follow the rules and regulations of the state. 13th of November, I wrote a piece about the capture of a 32-year-old wannabe king and the future price of crude oil, and in that I quoted Robert Fisk, who concluded, put bluntly, he's clawing down all his rivals. The New Yorker, in a very hard-hitting piece by David Remnick, says the President of the United States has become a leading security threat to the United States. Chaotic, corrupt, incurious, infantile, grandiose, obsessed with gaudy real estate, Donald Trump is of a neuronic temperament. He has always craved attention. Now the whole world is his audience. Future scholars will sift through Trump's digital proclamations the way we now read the chroniclers of Nero's Rome to understand how an unhinged emperor can make a mockery of republican institutions, undo the collective nervous system of a country, and degrade the whole of public life. Last week, when Trump returned to Washington from Mar-a-Lago, he set a White House record with a 16-tweet day. He behaved less like a president than like a teenager, locked in his room with an ounce of purple skunk, 3 Happy Meals, and a cell phone. A new book by Michael Wolff, Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House, amplifies in lurid anecdote and quotation what we've been learning elsewhere every day for the past year. Trump believed he would lose the election, but would multiply his fame, his fortune, and his standing in American life. To near universal shock, however, he won, and the consequences followed. Trump has no comprehension of policy and cares about it less. He surrounds himself with aides who are either wildly incompetent or utterly defeated in their attempts to domesticate the mulish and bizarre object of their attention. There is no loyalty or deliberation in the White House, only a savage Lord of the Flies sort of chaos. Each day is at once preposterous, poisonous, and dangerous. He's quoted as saying, "Where is my Roy Cohn?" he asked his aides angrily, according to the Times, when his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, defied his wishes and recused himself from the Russian investigation. The President of the United States has become a leading security threat to the US. Steve Bannon grovels to the President, says he's sorry to him, and Don Jr. Indy is, as I said on the 7th of August last year, a unique individual, and his Twitter account gives us surgical and real-time insights into his mental state. Anyone who has to call himself a genius isn't, says Stephen king. Bannon was quoted by Wolf as saying this is all about money laundering. The path to expletive Trump goes right through Paul Manafort, Don Jr. and Jared Kushner. For good measure, he added, it's as plain as a hair on your face. It goes through Deutsche Bank and all the Kushner stuff, Bannon adds. The Kushner stuff is greasy. They're going to go right through that. He used a nastier word than stuff, but let's keep things family friendly around here. Bannon then roasts the Trump White House for how ill-prepared it is to take on Mueller's team. They're sitting on a beach trying to stop a Category 5. I said on the 7th of August, any financial expert will tell you that President Trump's financial affairs are a smoking gun. I also said there is a prima facie case here and it's in plain sight. The Washington Post, he's sounding presidential. No, he's reading off a teleprompter, likely with very little comprehension. He's playing four-dimensional chess with Kim Jong-Un. No, he's impulsively lashing out, with the risk of provoking a deadly clash. He's a master manipulator when he shifts from position to position, sometimes in the same sentence. No, he likely doesn't realize what contradicts what or remember what he originally said. His use of alternative facts is a brilliant scheme to control the press narrative. No, he's capable of processing real information and driven by an insatiable need for praise and reaffirmation. Bloomberg View is saying that the Trump factor is likely responsible for the dollar's weakness. I think that's correct. President Trump keeps bragging about the stock index gain since his election. He did so again on Friday, claiming it helped create $6 trillion in value. Be that as it may, it's also likely that Trump is at least partially responsible for the dollar's weak performance in 2017, which from an international perspective wiped out much of that value. I couldn't agree more. Wrote a piece, The End Zone in the Mighty Dollar, where I thought we were going to get a big dead cat bounce. We didn't get it. Currency markets, let's take a look. Euro dollar 120.28, softened up, got to 120.80 plus on Friday. Dollar index around the 92.01 level. Japanese yen still soft, 113.21. I think the dollar yen runs out of steam just below 113.40. Swiss franc 0.9753, the pound 135.64. The Australian dollar 0.7844, India rupee 63.325, South Korean won, where they've warned about volatility, 1066.80, Brazilian real 322.93, Egyptian pound 17.7145, South African rand, as you know, I'm very bullish about that, last trading at 12.32.18. Dollar index last at 92.05. My target is 88. Euro dollar, this chart is from T Commodity. My target is 124. Traders seem to be bearish, the euro at these levels, T Commodity and others. And here's another chart from FX Macro. As I said, we're looking for 124. We're at 120.27. One of my trades was to be long Ripple and short Bitcoin this year, the short Bitcoin position is very tactical. It's when we can get above close to 17,000, I think we put the short on. Commodity markets, gold last trading just above 1320. It's had a great run from 1241. WTI crude oil settled at $61.44. Last trading at $61.58, and I'm not one who thinks we're going to see a big correction. I think we're headed higher. If you're bullish on India, you will love this chart. Basic 5.0 extension points to 37,500 according to David Inglis. Let's move to Sub-Saharan Africa. Sudan's bread prices double after government cuts wheat subsidies. The price of one loaf of bread rose 0.5 Sudanese pounds to £1, the union said, after the prices of wheat flour rose. Country's biggest opposition party called for peaceful protests against the new budget, and crowds gathered outside bakeries in Khartoum, expressing frustration against the government's move. The new prices will make us starve to death, said Fatima Ahmed, a housewife. who was out buying bread. The government doesn't care about us, our conditions are harsh, we won't be able to endure anymore. And of course the price of bread has a very high correlation to revolution, but I don't think we're at that point. Photography, sunset, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Take a look at this. Zimbabwe's Mnangagwa rules out forming a coalition government. I thought he should have formed one because I wrote in November. What is clear now is that Zimbabwe is entering a new normal, and that in the medium term Zimbabwe has the potential to be one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. The people want to grab that opportunity with both hands. I said if ZANU-PF want to be part of that new, more optimistic future, they need to invite the opposition into government. Clearly the army's calling the shots and not keen on doing that. They have, it seems to me, got a big cash boost from Bank. The privatization program is a promising development. So from the economic front, I think they're doing the right things, but I still think from the political front it was the wrong approach. Mugabe's sons face arrest after anti-corruption probe. And then in an interesting article in All Africa, it's saying the Zimbabwean army is the biggest beneficiaries of the coup. The basic lesson of politics is that you do not take power to share it with everyone, but to enjoy it. As such, the operation is much about those who took power from Mugabe and no one else. South African all shares up 0.36% so far this year. South Africa's rand eyes its longest weekly winning streak since 2002. And I said in December, if Cyril Ramaphosa succeeds in wrestling the leadership of the ANC, South African assets will enter the sweetest of sweet spots. Global investors will surely buy the rand by the bucket load, and we could see a further meaningful rally in the order of 10% towards 12 versus the dollar. The New Yorker asks, can Cyril Ramaphosa revive the South African dream? And I was asking in December, will it be 1994 all over again? There are challenges, but I think I'm optimistic. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launched the classified Zuma payload at 8 p.m. and lands its first stage back at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's landing zone 1. Dollar versus rand last at 12.3076. I'm bullish about that. I'm looking for 12 and then 11. Steinhoff is to sell $25 million worth of a Gulfstream jet as funds ebb. My piece on the 11th of December was about this man with a Midas touch. King Goodwill Zwelithini is seen welcoming ANC officials to his royal palace in KwaZulu-Natal in this video. Nigerian all shares up 1.78% so far this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 2.19% so far this year. Very interesting article in the BBC, why African millennials can't get enough of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has really taken off in part because of the volatility in our own currencies. On the 27th of November, I wrote a piece, Bitcoin, wow, what a ride. And I left everyone with a quote from Hunter S. Thompson. Life should not be a journey to the grave, with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. Here in Kenya, the unexplained absence of Deputy President William Ruto at State House when his boss, President Kenyatta, unveiled the first batch of the cabinet was something that caught the nation's attention. Nairobi all shares up 1.73% this year. NSE 20 is up 0.04% this year. Kenya Power was a political player at the expense of the consumers. Thank you, Nation, for your editorial in the Sunday Nation. That's Apollo Boya. Take a read of what he's saying. Kenya Power trades on an egregious price-earnings ratio of 2.446. A lot is because of the lack of credibility to which Apollo was referring. Save the Mount Elgon Elephants Appeal. This is the Born Free Foundation. The underground elephants of Mount Elgon, Kenya are really a wonder to behold. I wish I could behold them myself in person. Hopefully I will do that one day. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I do appreciate it.